All right. Well, welcome here, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome to the Missions Focused Weekend 2021. And we're doing things a little bit differently this year. So we're very thankful for the technology, but we can still connect with each other and connect with some of our missionaries who are across the ocean this morning. So I'm Nikki Taves, by the way, and I'm a member of the missions ministry team at WFC. And I will be kind of navigating our conversations today. And this morning, we'll be hearing from two different families. And then after they've shared a little bit about what they're doing, what they've been up to, and some of the challenges and opportunities they're facing, then we'll have some time for some question and answers. And then we'll break into smaller groups and pray with each other for our missionaries and for some of the things that they've shared. So you should have all received some instructions on how to work Zoom a little bit. And so when it comes to the Q&A, and I'll remind you later if you need, but you'll see at the bottom, there's a reactions button. It has a little smiley face. So when you click on that, you can either raise your hand and then I can choose you and you can ask your question, or you can ask your questions through the chat function. So we'll start off with prayer and then we'll jump right in. So, dear God, thank you so much for this beautiful day and this opportunity that we have to connect with each other and connect with some of our missionaries overseas, and just to hear what you're doing in their lives and the lives around them and the work that they're doing. And God, I just pray that it would be an encouraging time for us to hear from them, and also for them, that we can encourage them and find out ways how we can support them and lift them up. God, thank you. In your name I pray. Amen. All right. So first of all, we're going to hear from Marvin and Heidi Schmidt, and they're located in Spain in the Madrid area. And my husband, Patrick, and I actually had the opportunity to meet them personally and spend some time with them while we were in Spain. I think we were saying it was about 3 years ago now. It's crazy how time flies. So yeah, we're looking forward to hearing more about your ministry. So I'll hand it over to you.
All right. Yes. So Marvin and Heidi Schmidt, and as Nikki said, so we're working in Spain. We've been in Spain for just over 10 years. And in this area right now that we're in, we've been here about 4 years right now. And so I want to share a little bit about the main things that we're doing. I'm involved in a lot of different smaller ministries, but the main thing is aiming towards a form of discipleship, which I'll be explaining. So I would like to share my screen. And all right.
Ask if they can see it.
Okay. Now I can't see anybody for some reason. Usually there's somebody on the thing on the side, so I can't actually see anybody. So just tell me, Nikki, if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. I can see you. I can see your screen as well.
Okay. All right. Just normally I can see myself. So, okay. All right. So yes, we have a real heart to reach Spain. And so it's been a slow process. It's been really hard. The ministry in Spain hasn't been easy. And we've been asking ourselves over the years that we've been here, which way we can reach Spain in a way that's going to really make a change. And it can't, what we realize is that it can't just depend on ourselves. So we're not going to be able to do it by ourselves. So we're going to have to find a different way of discipleship that's really going to make an impact in the community. And so that's kind of what we've been working on. So I've been working a bit on a team in this sense. And these two animals help us to explain a little bit of the concept of the difference between different way of making disciples and what we're really aiming towards in the bigger picture. So I am working on a number of different ministries, but the main thing is aiming towards this thing that will multiply. And so at first you see these two animals. They both have a main body with legs extending outward, but the difference begins right there. I mean, one animal has a central nervous system, And so you take out the head, you take out the whole animal. Whereas the starfish, if you cut it into pieces, each leg actually has the capability to grow a new starfish. And so those are concepts that we'll kind of be developing that as I share a little bit. And so we're kind of trying to develop a discipleship that doesn't create a dependency on us, but that has the capability to multiply. And that's what we're aiming for. So I'll ask Heidi to read this passage for me.
Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. And when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age.
Okay, so in this passage, there's a number of things that can be drawn out of this, but we're going to focus on a couple key issues here. One thing is that's interesting that I hadn't previously thought of and seen is that actually there were doubters in the group. There was people, the disciples were worshiping, but there were doubters. So even for those of us who are doubters, like Jesus commissioned even doubters to go out and make disciples. So that's really encouraging. Another thing is that he told them to go out and make disciples of all the nations, which at that point they didn't necessarily understand. But the thing was that at Pentecost, basically, it was 120 of them, and everybody outside of that was a non-believer, basically. And so they were to go out and make disciples by baptizing and teaching obedience to Jesus' commands. So they were to bring people into a relationship with God by teaching obedience. Okay, so that's a key element that is part of this form of discipleship that we're working towards. Now we come back to the spider. So, okay, let's see if I can get my, yes, oh, hello, sorry. All right, okay. So let's say I'm just starting by myself. So this is me here, I'm starting by myself. I want to start reaching out to lost people. And let's say I find this person over here, Juan, and let's say I begin to disciple him. And then he, in turn, after he's been discipled, finds somebody else. But he says, well, Marvin has the time and the training, the theological training and all that to make disciples. So I'm going to send him back to Marvin again. And if our default in our community is to, without even wanting to, we create this dependent or this hierarchy structure on ourselves. Then, so then the people that I can reach out to only is limited to the amount of people around me which I can reach. Whereas what we're finding out now with a simpler form of discipleship is that if we train small groups, train people in a simple way of making disciples, we can see a lot of multiplication. And the example of that is the following. It's a model of Alcoholics Anonymous that was started in 1935 by Bill Wilson. And what he did was really interesting. He made the only membership requirement was to stop drinking. That was your only desire, was to have a desire to stop drinking and be willing to follow along with the group. And he designed 12 simple steps, and then he let that loose. So basically, anybody that had the desire to start a group and was willing to follow those 12 steps, anybody could do this thing. And so then it started spreading out like crazy. It's because of experience. People had the experience of lives changed by following these 12 steps in a group. And then there was also no borders because it got translated to different languages. And so in 2016, an estimated 2 million people were active members at that point of groups. And it's estimated because at that point they had, like, once it starts spreading out, you have no idea. You can't really count the things anymore. You can't really count it because it just goes all over the place. And so that's a simple form of discipleship that we're working on, of training obedience in a simple way that believers can bring non-believers to the word, to discover it, to share it, and put it into practice. And then it begins to look like this. It begins to look like something that's spreading out in different directions. So it may have a central point where it starts, but then it has no borders. Okay. Can you read these passages?
If you love me, you will keep my commandments, and I will ask the Father, and he will give you another helper to be with you forever. Whoever has my commandments and keeps them, he it is who loves me. And he who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and manifest myself to him. Jesus answered him, if anyone loves me, he will keep my word, and my Father will love him. And we will come to him and make our home with him. Whoever does not love me does not keep my words, and the word that you hear is not mine, but the Father's who sent me.
Mm-hmm. So you'll notice this is all within a few verses. And it's repeated several times. Love me and keep my commands. Love me and keep my commands. He who obeys my commands, he who puts these things into practice, is he who loves me. So it talks about that relationship that we can come into by putting into practice God's word. And this is the simple format that we help non-believers to come to God's word through, and help them to discover God's word, and it's super impactful. We've had the experience a number of times of non-believers coming around the word and drawing things out, and then challenging them to put it into practice, and challenging them to share it with others. So in this, there are three levels of impact that we've come to realize. The first level of impact is the groups that I can start myself. So I'll be explaining that and giving a couple examples. The second one is how I can train other believers to start groups. And this is how, actually, now with the pandemic, it's been really interesting. Okay, so the training process to us has also been interesting. So first of all, sorry, I'll back up a little bit. First of all, we started training with material that we received from others, that we learned from other places, and we realized that doesn't really work, because discipleship begins with us, and it's an experience. It's growing together, it's learning together. And so we learned that we had to change our style, so that we were drawing from the word and giving it to other people in a simpler format. So we started by training in a conference style of discipleship and had very few responses. And once we started training more specifically with individuals and smaller groups, we began seeing a greater impact. And actually, the pandemic helped us in that sense, because we were going to do a training in person, and the pandemic forced us to go online. And when we went online, we were no longer limited to the places that we could go to. We could start training anywhere. So there were no borders anymore. We could train anywhere we wanted to. Obviously, our main focus is still in Spain, but we've begun training all over the world. So our team, and I'll explain who our team is in that sense. The third level of impact is actually when non-believers start coming to God's word, start putting it into practice, and become believers. In that process, they can bring others to the word and start groups. So this is the third level of impact, and this is where you really start to see a bit more of expansion and multiplication in that sense, in disciples beginning to make disciples as well. There's actually a fourth level of impact, but that's out of our range yet. So at this point, I have one first level impact training group with Jaime and Pedro and Santi. Jaime is not a believer and Santi is a believer. So what I've been doing with that is I've been bringing a couple of non-believers together and training also at the same time a new believer in how to start the groups. And so we've been meeting together. And now after this call, I'm going to go and meet with Jaime and do the next lesson, do the next study together. Level 2 impact is, okay, so I've been involved with helping to train Hector and Yomaira, who at this point have 3, so it's DG, discovery groups in their town. And they in turn have trained other people in other countries. Alex in Germany, who started a discovery group with 3 families of non-believers. And also in turn, Hector Yomaira and I started training Julia. And Julia has started 2 groups with non-believers. Well, one group is with a group of teenagers or kids, and the other group is a mixed group of 2 believers and 2 non-believers. And she is also training the youth group, and also Armando in turn has started a discovery group with his friends as well. So that's how you see that things are spreading out, and we're training in such a simple way that people can immediately take that, put it into practice, and immediately train others as well. So that's how we're finding the biggest impact. Next, you see Grant and I. Grant invited me to help train Matias and Maite, who I didn't know. And within a week or 2 of us starting to train them, they started taking the first lessons that we took that we gave to them, and they automatically, without us really telling them, they started training people all over Spain. So here's a bit of a map. Okay, so where the red arrow is, that's where Matias and Maite are.
And arrow? Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that's where Matias and Maite are, up on the north east side of Spain there. And they started training somebody right there, someone right there, someone there, someone there, and someone in these areas. And so by going onto Zoom and with the pandemic, then our training has just gone all over the place. And this is just one couple that started training different people. So we have people training different people all over Spain. And this couple, Matias and Maite, they were actually they are Spaniards. They were new in their community. They were a little disappointed that because they were new in their community, they didn't know too many people in their community, and also because of the pandemic, they were limited to being able to go out among non-believers and start a group. They tried. Matias tried to connect with a neighbor, but they have been faithful in training others who, in turn, have been able to start groups in different places. And they have been involved in missions work as well in Mexico. So they've started training Mexico, and they want to start in Ivory Coast this year. They've tried, but because of internet limitations in Ivory Coast, they haven't been able to train there. So, and they've invited me to go down and help train discipleship groups down there in Ivory Coast. So
that's kind of cool. Like with the pandemic, with everything moving online, your reach is actually widened significantly.
Oh yes, for sure. And I'm talking about Spain here. Okay, so our team, during the training, we invited people from Portugal to come. Even at the beginning, like when the first trainings that we did, kind of conference trainings, and there were a few people that responded from that. And right now, there's 25 non-believers that are in groups in Portugal. So, yep.
Wow.
Yep. And so, okay, let's see. So this is our team now. This kind of where the root team started. Which was actually, we just started hearing about a simpler form of discipleship, and we started reading about it. And then we started hearing about other people that were doing the same thing. And through common interest and common desire to multiply disciples, we kind of put a team together, and it's flat. Like nobody's in charge of anything. Everybody's working together.
Organized chaos.
Yes.
No.
So the star in the middle, that's where we're at. The star in the middle, that's where we're at. Up north, there's a group up there, and down south we have another team that started up down there as well. And so that's kind of where our root team started up. But we're basically training in every province in Spain, in Portugal, Germany, Venezuela, Colombia, India, Nepal, parts of the US. But yes, as I said, the main focus of our desire is to see multiplication happening in Spain. So that's what we're working mainly towards.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yes, well, that was just to kind of refer back to. So yeah, so Zoom training has kind of made it really multiply to the point where we've seen things really taking off, and yeah, and really seen training increase. So
very cool. And before we get to the Q&A and the prayer time, I don't want to cut you off too soon, but I would love to hear a bit more about how can we as a supporting church and fellow believers just be in practical support of you and your work, and then what are some things that we can be praying for specifically for you and your ministry?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So we have seen many things happen through groups multiplying, and that's kind of exciting. But in the day-to-day, it feels like super slow. Everything feels like slow motion, and many times it's discouraging. You start a group and maybe the group doesn't continue, or you know. So pray for us. I mean, we're being persistent in this. We've been developing a team and working together over many years. Past 3 or 4 years. So it's taken a lot of patience and persistence, being in the Word and encouraging each other and praying for each other. So you can pray for perseverance for sure. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And are there any kind of besides prayer, any kind of practical ways that you can think of that we can be supporting you? Like, I don't know. I know that Patrick and I were talking that like so often there's things that people can help missionaries with in creative ways. Like we were just thinking our experience overseas, like just for example, how much time and energy has to be put into, for example, formatting prayer letters or things like that just take so much time. And maybe there's people who are really good at formatting, or maybe it's helping with a website or a blog, or I don't know. But like, I don't know if you can think of ways that maybe there's something that people can do really practically to just, I don't know, help.
Well, just maybe a way to be encouraging practically is we love to receive any kind of message,
Mm-hmm.
email or a WhatsApp group or even snail mail. Like that's just very, very encouraging to know people take the time and make the time.
Mm-hmm.
Something even like, you know, doesn't have to be more than 3 or 4 sentences. Just like, you know, hey, been thinking of you this week, you know, that kind of thing. That is so encouraging. It goes a long way. It really does go a long way.
Mm-hmm. Reminds you, yeah, that you're not alone. People are thinking about you and praying for you. Yeah,
I mean, we're always remembering, and we know that people are praying for us. We know that. We know that, but it just it adds another level when someone takes the time to write, you know, a few short lines.
For sure.
Yeah. I also had at one point I had a podcast going because when we're learning, we were kind of eager to learn from each other across the Spanish speaking community, and there are more books being translated now. At the beginning, there wasn't very much in the simple form of discipleship. There wasn't much available. So I actually had a podcast where I was interviewing a bunch of different people. Some who we were training, so we were just, you know, getting them to share their initial experiences and stuff. and others who were in different countries that were further along in seeing disciples multiplied and stuff like that. There was a movement in Nicaragua. There was a small movement in California of disciples, and one in Cuba. And a couple of those guys I was able to interview, and they could share from their experiences. And so that was encouraging. And so in the technical part of podcasts, I was like totally zero. Like I started with nothing. So if people have advice for me in that would be a good thing as well. So
Okay.
Started off really simple.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing, and we can get a little bit more. Maybe we'll move into the question and answer section. So if anyone has specific questions, if there's something that stood out to you, want to know more about, this is your opportunity. So like I said, you can either at the bottom, the reactions, click that reaction button and raise your hand, and I'll call on you and you can ask your question, or you can just type in the chat and I can read it out as well. So I'll take some time for that.
One thing I was just going to also mention, Nikki, we are recording this by request. People wanted to be able to view it later, but we will also be editing anything that shouldn't be, that maybe sensitive questions or sensitive information that might be discussed. So just wanted to let people know it is being recorded again, just so that we capture this and give opportunity for those who haven't been able to join us this morning to learn a bit more.
Okay. I guess one question that I had is that, because you use the Discovery Bible Study model, right? Could you just flesh that out a little bit more, like what that looks like, in case anyone here is curious about it? Or
Yeah, and yes, the discovery questions are very, very simple. Basically, it's to ask how people's week went, both the good things and the challenging things. To ask them who is somebody that they could help during the week, and then we read a text 2 or 3 times, express the text in our own words to help remember it, and then we ask, what does the text say about God? What does the text say about man? And then we take time to listen to what we might feel challenged by from the text and how we can put it into practice during the week. And then also somebody that we can share it with. So this we do with non-believers. We challenge them to see how they can put this text into practice during the week. And with, obviously, it may start with something, a very simple, practical way of putting the text into practice. And then someone they can share it with during the week. And it's done in such a simple way, it's facilitating. Asking the questions is actually not really leading a group, it's facilitating a group, because it's merely asking the questions and making sure that everybody has a chance to answer them. And so it's done in such a simple way that we can quickly get other people to ask the questions in the group. And it's done in a way that it can be taken and reproduced quickly by others. Yeah.
And do you work through like a whole book of the Bible and just go like chapter by chapter, or how do you choose your text?
Those are kind of things that we're learning at this point, and even with our training. So our training actually started out with a lot more theory, and then we at one point we actually had somebody doing the training with their non-believing friends instead of, and then we thought, no, we need to, like, we're not doing this right. We need to make this a lot simpler so people can understand it a lot more. And so we're learning about how to train, and also about the texts, what texts to use. Normally, the traditional texts have been a creation to Christ. So it goes all the way from Genesis to Christ in about 28 passages. But there has been a significant impact in jail ministry, which, because of the way jails work, people are moved around a lot, people are coming in and out. So the text list needs to be shorter so that they come to the salvation message sooner. And so there's been a list of, for example, 10 stories of hope, which has had a significant impact. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. All right, I have a question here from Mark Grafe, and he's asking, what are the challenges of sharing the gospel in Spain? Are people eager to hear, or are they skeptical?
Yes.
That's a very good question.
Yeah. So Spain is pretty much post-Catholic. There's kind of, because of tradition, a lot of people say that they're Catholic because of tradition. So much so that I've had friends that are Catholic atheists, and stuff like that. And to a lot of them, because of what's happened in the past, it seems to be, it's kind of hard to understand. It seems to be that they think that religion is controlling, like, especially, I mean, I guess with the global aspect of religion now, if nobody wants to be like a radical believer, because being radical is like, ooh, that's like, you know. So then people say, you know, and a lot of people even say, well, I'm baptized, like just to cover it, you know, in the Catholic Church, they're baptized just to cover the base, just in case be true. So it's very post-Catholic, and they don't easily open up to spiritual matters.
I know that when we were spent time in Catholicus, that we got, from what we understood, it seemed that people almost felt that Protestant or evangelical churches, they almost viewed it as a cult, like kind of weird. They didn't almost want to associate with that. Do you find that as well?
You kind of lump it all together. All the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons, all those people are all lumped together in their minds. You're either Catholic or you're something from a cult or a sect. So it can be very challenging to, I mean, because a lot of those religions or a lot of those sects do kind of sound very evangelical, and so with the message from, you know, an evangelical point of view, and it can be very hard for them to understand there is a big difference between religion and relationship.
And also, like, a large portion are still like culturally Catholic, and so when they see me having my beliefs, they say, "Oh yeah, of course you're North American, so you're going to be that." That's like, no duh. And so you're that, and I'm this. So that's.
Thank you. We got another question here from Gerald and June Reimer. They're just wondering a bit more about your personal background, just to get to know you a bit more.
Yeah. So we're both MKs. We both were born in Paraguay. So my grandparents on both sides were missionaries in Paraguay. My parents met there, and I grew up between Paraguay and Canada. And
my parents are from the States, and they went down as medical missionaries originally in the early 70s, and transitioned to Bible translation plus medical ministry, and then to jail ministry. And so, yeah, they've done a whole variety of stuff. And so I was born and raised in Paraguay, well, between US and Paraguay. Yeah. And now we've been in Spain for 10 years. Before that, we were in Canada for 6 years. And before that, we were in Paraguay for 7 years after we'd gotten married. So the Lord has just been so good to allow us to be a part of this time. And I mean, our mind was never, we never in a million years thought we'd live in Spain. But yet here we are, you know.
Seems like God's plan often takes us places we never thought we'd see ourselves.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I have another question from Carl and Grace, I think referring back to the Discovery Bible study model. They said that it sounds exciting. How well does the retention factor work? I know that the 12-step program is quite successful.
Yeah. Yes. So what we've been finding in different countries is that there's different levels of social connection with people. So the way it spreads from, like, okay, so the retention was more from one person, right, in the study?
Yeah.
Okay, I think it would be more for how it's in the process. Okay, so what generally what we're aiming for in a discovery group is actually to have a group of non-believers together. So what happens when you're a smaller group is there's less drawn out. So the bigger the group is, the bigger the group of non-believers is, the more that they can draw out from the text by working together to draw things out. And so the more that they actually learn, and so we're aiming not to have like one believer and one non-believer. We're aiming to have actually the biggest groups of non-believers doing the study, actually. And even in cases where, because it's not leading the group, it's facilitating, a believer can be coaching a non-believer to even do the study. That we haven't experienced yet here. We've only been believers actually leading the study or being involved with the study. And so far, we have seen a number of people become believers. Just a couple weeks ago, there was one new believer baptized that became a believer through discovery. At this point, we haven't seen too much multiplication. There are some small groups that have started up close by here. There's a couple named David and Yessi, and they became believers through discovery, and they in turn have helped start another group where a lady became a believer. So we're only beginning to see like what the third level, what I refer to as a third level of multiplication.
Did you say about the size? What's an ideal size of a group?
Yeah, the ideal size would probably be about 6 people. 6 people. It takes approximately, you add about 15 minutes per person as you add the group. So in maybe African cultures, they're not as time sensitive. They can for 3 hours. With 3 hours. So if you have big, it's okay. But yes, here people wouldn't have that kind of time. So yes.
I think Carl's question was also just early on, you made reference to sort of a structure coming out of the Alcoholics Anonymous model and that aspect of retention, keeping people moving along in those steps. We're not talking about AA per se, but we're talking about that aspect of engagement and keeping them interested.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, the standard lesson or the standard passage is from creation to Christ in about 28 week study. So the idea is to bring them along to the creation to Christ. The majority of the people that have started in groups have continued. The majority that have started have continued into groups. I'm not sure if I'm getting the answer there.
Like they don't just come once and quit. It seems like most of the people stay interested and commit to the whole 28 weeks.
Yeah, the majority, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, because of like this, there isn't too much spiritual connectedness in Spain is one of the challenges that we've kind of been coming across. So for example, in a Muslim country, talking about God is normal for people and they're totally okay about talking with God. So they might have a family member that talks about God, and in that sense, they can share something about God with their family member. In Spain, there might be a husband that has spiritual interest, but the wife doesn't, and the husband doesn't feel comfortable inviting his own wife to a study. To talk about spiritual matters. And so that has been a limiting factor in how the groups can spread out to more non-believers.
Okay, and then another question, what struggles are you experiencing right now?
Yes. Okay. So the idea with this style of discipleship is that it's investing deeply in people and investing deeply in believers that we're training, and then the groups that we are starting with non-believers, we are spending a significant amount of time with them, with the non-believers. It's not just a study. We try to spend time outside of the study with them, with the non-believers. And so at the beginning, the investment, the initial investment is that with the idea that in the long run we will see more multiplication. So up front, it really feels slow. So that is a big challenge for me. Discouragement when it feels slow.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'd say also right now there's some changes coming up. Just also the pandemic has just given us a lot of mental strain. I think all experience that, whether we're in missions or not, to some extent, we've all experienced like this sort of COVID fatigue, COVID weariness. And I think that really, coming to the end of the school year, upcoming changes, home assignment for us on our end, just different things that are coming. I think just be able to finish strong, be able to continue, those things are very real for us right now too. To persevere and continue with joy, with much joy.
Yeah. Heidi's working in a missionary school, and so there's actually been a lot of challenges with the school of how to keep it running. There was the lockdown in the middle where the school had to go completely online, and then all the regulations that had to be followed when everything opened up again. So so there was some challenge and strain on that too, on the staff for sure.
That actually leads into the next question, which I'll keep as the last question. But Mark Reimer was asking if Heidi could share a little bit about her teaching ministry and also a little bit about where your kids are.
Yeah, I actually volunteer at a Christian school, which is a missionary school founded for missionary families and their children. And so I work in the front office there together with a bunch of 4 other people. And so I've been doing that for about 4 years. And I really, really enjoy that. I really feel that's where the Lord has me right now in this season. And that's where our children are going to school as well. Brian will be graduating now in June. And Ceci is finishing 8th grade. And right now, Brian is actually on a spiritual retreat with his class. It's overnight. They can't leave our province. Our provinces are still closed. There is a retreat center in the northern part of Madrid. So they're there overnight tonight. So we're praying for that, just that it'll be a really good time as a class and as they seek the Lord for each of their futures. There are 8 students in his class. And Ceci is doing really well. She's upstairs in her room. And it's just our children are growing up. We have another older daughter. She's married to Dani. Dani is a Spaniard from Granada, from the southern part of Spain, and they live everywhere right now. And they're hopefully, Lord willing, coming back to Spain now in the fall. They want to move back to Spain. So that's kind of where our family's at right now and what I'm doing. Really, really just love what the Lord has opened for me at this time.
Cool. I think we can squeak one more question. I see Andrew and Robin, your hand is up. So I'll end it there. I'm going to cut the line there, but go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, I'm not familiar with your whole situation, and you mentioned having a team. So I'm just curious, do you have a team in Madrid that you can physically connect with, or where do you get your support? Do you have a church that you participate in? Where do you have your support from?
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of, there is actually many different things that I'm involved in. So we are involved directly in a church plant in the next town over, which we participate in on Sundays. That church, because of the situation of COVID, has shrunk down to a tiny group at this point. The team that I'm referring to in discipleship is we have a local team and then a national team. We have different areas, like 3 different areas. There's teams in each area. And so we get together on different levels for prayer meetings to pray for each other. We have local prayer time meetings, Zoom meetings at this point, because some of them are just across the border. So once things open up, then our local team can physically get together and pray for each other. And then we have other teams that we get together with at different times and national prayer time as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share a little bit with us. And so we're going to break into prayer groups now. Jeremy will be sorting that all out. So we'll be going into smaller groups. And if your group has one of our mission ministry members in it, team members, they'll direct you further. But essentially, we just want to be praying for the particular needs that the Schmidts have shared with us. And then once you're done praying, you can leave the breakout room to return here, and we'll hear from the Swatskis. And if your group is still praying when we want to start the next presentation, we'll close the breakout rooms and you'll be invited back here. So thanks again.
Second year in a row that this has happened. Like last year, some of you know I was planning to come back and for just a briefer time and visit immediate family. Our siblings, our son and his wife, and our new little grandson at that time, who's just about to have his second birthday now, and our daughter and her husband, and as well as, you know, a few other close friends where we could fit it in. For me, we've discovered over these last several years, I guess, that loss is one of the big triggers for me for returning depression symptoms, as well as overwork and like taking way too much on my plate for too long and getting too exhausted, and I end up burning out. Been there too much. So I had to work through the grieving over all those losses associated with the loss of the trip last year, and then again this year. And I think I'm more encouraged. I'm coming through that grief faster this time, having seen how the Lord taught me and provided and helped me in that situation last year. But what was I going to say? That's enough for now.
Okay. Locally, the pandemic has been, there's a bit of lockdown in Nairobi and area. We're up in the northern part of Kenya. And our place we live close to is not locked down, but it's just rampant. The hospitals, they can't cope. There's no oxygen, ICU, forget it. You get sick, there's no help. So it's people are quite concerned about it, especially older people. So recently they said the vaccines are available for people over 58. And so I got my first, here they call it a jab. I got my first jab last week, but now we found out probably they can't get the second one. It's not available. So we're like,
At least
okay,
not yet.
not yet. So we'll see where that goes. But we've been healthy. We've been very thankful. But a lot of neighbors around us, a lot of senior people in this community, we live out in the country a little bit, have passed away. Been a pretty big impact all around us. And
if somebody knows somebody, or they themselves have had it, or know somebody close to them that's died, they're taking it seriously. But a lot of people aren't, and they have the idea that, oh no, it's not here, it's only in Nairobi or the big cities or something.
right.
Yeah, it's difficult, but it has provided all kinds of opportunities to share about the Lord, to hear people's concerns, to talk about death, their cultural funeral rites. What difference does it make when a Christian is facing death or bereavement because their family has died? And so that's been a really cool benefit that has come out of something very difficult. And it's continuing. Yeah.
One of the typical patterns that's happened here, and this, I don't know how this is impacting WEFC, but a typical pattern in a church here is when a church is dealing with a crisis internally, the tendency is to focus inward and not to be thinking outward. So that tends to be the pattern here. They're trying to just survive. People are not coming together. There's limitations. What is it now? 30 people in a service? It changes.
I think is it 50 now? It's
50
30
something.
at a wedding, 50 at a funeral.
Yeah, okay, something like that. So all of these limitations that they're facing, and the local pastors, it has encouraged house fellowships, but the churches are struggling to survive, and a lot of people are just sort of disappearing into the woodwork. And it is really a critical time to be thinking outward and not just inward in our personal survival as our little group. So this is actually a wonderful opportunity to speak into the lives of broken people that are all around us. You want to add anything on that too?
No.
Okay. Okay. And also, I guess there was a question asked of us, how can you, as a group, church group, what can you learn from our experiences? And
Did you want to say how they can be encouraged in their daily witness
okay,
first?
you go ahead.
Because that's the next question.
Okay, well, I jumped over the next page, but anyway, you go ahead for the
Okay.
time.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say focus on relationships, whether it's with your neighbors or your work colleagues or other friends or however you know people, or even if you're aware of them. When you go to the grocery store, we're hearing how the pandemic has really increased loneliness. It's increased mental health issues. If you can be really intentional, especially with people of other ethnic groups, if they come from a culture that is more community group oriented, you think of how lonely you are from an individualistic culture sometimes in this last year. Multiply that probably for a number of them that feel really cut off. Often the idea is we are, I am because we are, like their individual identity is wrapped up in the group often. And also right now it's Ramadan, as I'm sure at least some of you are aware. Be praying especially for Muslims this month. They are those who are, sincere in their faith. They're fasting, they're praying, they're seeking truth. They're asking God for visions and dreams. Pray that the Lord will send those to help them understand the truth about Jesus. And if you get a chance to connect with any Muslims in your neighborhood or at the grocery store or anything, even to ask them, how is COVID impacting the way you're celebrating, Ramadan this year, and what struggles are you having? Or that can be with anybody, and just to be able to share how it's impacted you too, not to just gloss over the hard stuff, but to be able to share what difference does it make that you know Jesus, with your non-Christian friends or neighbors, and that they can see Christians do struggle also. We don't always have all the answers, and we don't have it all together. We're in process, but that very fact that we're still in process can help them feel safer to open up about their struggles too. And sometimes people may even they may be open to you praying for them right then or later on. We're in a culture here, where normally people think it's normal to talk about God. They love it if you tell them you'll pray for them or if you'll stop and pray for them right then. I realize it's not like that in Canada mostly now. Or Spain. Yeah, or probably France. But just really seek the Lord even day by day. What opportunities might he be giving you? Whose hearts is he already preparing to intersect with you that day? And, to just really be listening to them. How can you understand them and what their struggles are? Yeah. Okay, now I'll stop.
Momentarily. One of the things that really has been striking me the last number of months, maybe it's just this stage where I am in my journey, as my stepdad used to say, life is like a roll of toilet paper. When you get near the end, it picks up speed. And so maybe it's that chapter in my journey that I just realized, you think about legacy, you think about what difference does it make that I was here? What lives have I poured into? And as I'm walking with these young leaders, and to me, it's just fascinating to see over these almost 40 years that we've been here in the African world, God has established some amazing relationships, and we've gone really deep with them. And as God is raising those leaders, and the whole focus is the DNA of multiplication. So, and we are facing serious leadership crisis here in the church, in community, all levels of society. And the pandemic has just even raised it even more to the surface. And so as I really focus on how do I make best use of the gifts and skills. How am I a good steward of those things? Anything I'm involved in, the multiplication of other leaders, how is that sustainable? How is it going to continue on when I'm not in the picture? And so anything that I'm beginning, anything that I'm walking with, I'm always asking those questions of being a good steward of personnel, resources, finances, all that stuff. Also, any relationships that I have, being a good steward, my relationship with God, with each other, with creation, so on, and understanding myself. These are all areas, relational areas that I really need to focus on in stewardship, sustainability. And so I've really been struggling with that and grappling with that, especially as I work with these initiatives that are being birthed. And if they're trying to copy a mission model they've copied from the West, it's not going to fly. It's not sustainable. It will not continue on. So how do we do this in an African way, training of leadership, that it will continue on when I'm not in the picture? So I'm very involved in behind the scene, developing, equipping, facilitating growth of young leaders as God leads them forward.
Right. So that was part of how they can be learning from our experiences,
That's
right?
Yeah, the focus
From the
on
stuff you've been learning and
That's right.
experiencing.
Right.
For me, I would say it's how can you, like, to do with the whole mental health issues area that has just been soaring with this pandemic, worldwide even. If you are somebody who's struggling with mental health issues, like, don't fear, ask for help, reach out. I know it's scary, especially at first. It feels very intimidating. You may be racked with a sense of shame and guilt, a sense that it's your fault, that you don't want anybody to know. You feel all alone, nobody can understand. But in reality, there are people out there that probably can empathize to a certain extent, at least, that do care. If you are somebody who isn't struggling with it yourself, ask the Lord to help you be sensitive to the people around you and who might need you to come alongside, and ask them how they're doing, or how you can pray for them, to really work at listening to them with the intent of wanting to understand what it's like for them, and not just to give them glib answers, which probably wouldn't be helpful, at least in the early stages. Well, glib answers are never helpful, but I think we really need, from both sides, we really need to work at destigmatizing mental health issues, especially in the church. You know, I'm sure for some of you, maybe you've had me up on a pedestal, and how on earth can a missionary struggle with this kind of stuff? And I remember, like, you know, after our crazy home assignment in 2016, when I was under incredible stress and time, so many things that had to happen that time during our shortened home assignment, and a lot of losses as well. And so both those things triggered the depression when we got back here. And I remember just feeling that sense of, I didn't know what quite was wrong. Somehow I concluded it must be my fault, because if I had handled all of those stresses and circumstances coming at me in a godly way, I would not be in this shape now. So somehow it must be my fault. And I didn't know quite how or why, but there was that fear, that shame, that sense of guilt that was just generalized. And the Lord has been very gracious to me. He's brought along some wonderful counselors with AIM Care, which is the counseling department of AIM, of Africa Inland Mission, a number of wonderful friends that have been a huge support to me. Some of you are actually here tonight and know who you are, or this morning for you. And we are part of a body. We need to encourage and support one another. I know, Len, you and Sharon have this mental health support group going right now, and I think that's wonderful. And it is needed in the church, in missions, in in the secular world as well, but I think there's less stigma about it in the secular world now than there is in the church or in missions worlds, probably, because we have this overlay of, you know, Jesus is supposed to be enough for me. And so what's wrong with my faith? If you're struggling, realize, or if you're not, realize that somebody who is, often it's really multifaceted. There may be a physical medical component that does need medication. There may be, you know, mental wrong beliefs or thinking that's not helpful. There's various emotions that they may feel like they can't really control. There's relational dynamics. There's patterns of how they relate. There may be spiritual things, all of that together. I mean, we are integrated people. In our culture, we dissect things and so we can talk about them, but in reality, it all does affect each other. And so you need to help somebody, or if you are that person, to get some holistic ways of approaching it. There's not just one thing or one narrow way that's going to fix it. And realizing we don't have guarantees. The Lord promised to always be with us through whatever we go, but he doesn't promise it's going to be easy. He doesn't promise I'm never going to fall into depression again. Now, as he's helping me to make certain changes, I think it's less likely that I'm going to go into such a deep slump for so long or so often. But I've been praying like, Lord, use this pain, not just in my life to help me learn and grow, use it to help and encourage other people. And so he has been doing that. And there's a sense of freedom that you may find, even though it's scary to open up to somebody, there's also a sense of freedom in realizing what's there to lose. What's important isn't other people's approval of me, or that I have to always be enough or to be perfect in what I do or how I come across. Knowing the Lord loves me and I belong to Jesus is what matters. And so take heart. If you are in those shoes, if you know people that are, pray for them, love on them, listen compassionately. And I will stop again.
And
I get on a roll here.
I'll just say briefly, part of my journey is how do I walk with her through this chapter?
Yeah, pray for him too. Like that,
Because
this has not been easy for him the last few years.
No. So as I walk through this journey, what impact all of this stuff I'm involved with, the leadership, with these young leaders and all this stuff that I'm doing, how does that impact? What do I need to change? How can I walk with her in this journey as God is leading us both through this chapter? And what does this look like in the African world, where there's a lot of stigmatism attached to mental health and challenges? And so how do they handle that? How do you talk about it to others that are around you, appropriately vulnerable? All of these questions. So how does my schedule, my life impact? How can I be of most help to her in this journey as we walk through this piece together? I think, Nikki, we hit about the 25-minute mark. So there's much more we can say.
Yeah.
But we'll just stop right there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing and being so honest and vulnerable about that. And what a great reminder for us as well. And even just ways that we can encourage you. And yeah, just that reminder that missionaries are ordinary people who have real struggles. And we tend to think of them as these superheroes, but they're human beings as well. And so thank you for sharing some of that. Before we get into our Q&A, I want to ask if you can just quickly kind of tell, like, is there any other specific ways we as a supporting church can support you practically? I mean, prayer and encouragement, of course. Can you think of any other ways that you would love support, or other specific ways that we can, pray for your ministry when we go into our prayer groups?
Okay, just a small thing. Jer is aware, and others that are on this. Every Tuesday, the men's group at Winnipeg Free, Tuesday morning at 7, they have a prayer time. And now that because they're on Zoom, I get to join them. So this is great.
3 in the afternoon.
3 in the afternoon, my time. So that's Tuesday. That's a highlight of my week. That has been a wonderful blessing for me. And so when I'm on home assignment, I tried to attend as much as I could when I was in Winnipeg. But now I can even do it, and we can do it online, which is an amazing gift. But that could be a helpful, practical thing. I'm not sure, Nikki, if there are still small groups meeting in the church, Zoom meetings, that kind of stuff. We would love to be part of that. You know, it's going to be like 3 in the morning for us kind of stuff, probably. But that's
Unless
okay.
you meet on a Saturday morning.
Unless you're on a Saturday.
But we could do it now and then. I wouldn't promise weekly. He might. He's a morning guy.
Morning guy, she's not. All right. So, but anyway, in a practical way, if small groups, we were part of small groups when we were in Winnipeg. We would love to join a Zoom and something like that. If they're meeting on a Zoom kind of a platform, that would be a very practical way. Another thing, I'd be very willing, some of these young leaders that I'm walking with, I can write up brief profiles. And if people are interested in praying for specific guys and specific issues and what's going on in their spheres of, you know, influence, just a short paragraph, kind of a quick little summary, a little thing like that, that they could actually be praying for these guys.
Or I could do that for a couple of the women.
A couple
also.
of the gals. And that could be very helpful. I'm not talking about finance stuff because that gets really messy and complicated. I'm just saying, how do we connect people with real people that are involved in ministry and challenges? And I've mentioned some of these guys in the prayer time when on Tuesdays, but that kind of thing facilitating that might be very helpful.
Oh, great ideas. Thank you. All right, I'll turn it over to the Q&A period. For those of you who have just joined or maybe came a bit later, you can either at the bottom of your screen, you'll notice reactions, a little smiley face. And if you click on that, you can raise your hand and then I'll call on you. You can directly ask them your question, or you can type a message to me in the chat and I'll read it out to them as you think of questions. If there's anything that you want to know more about or something they didn't touch on, or now's your chance. I just noticed Shirley Hill, you have a heart. I don't know if that's supposed to be a hands up or did you have a question?
She loves me. She's hugging me.
Okay.
I do have one prayer request I didn't mention while they're thinking. I am wondering if the Lord, I believe the Lord's wanting me to get more involved in a member care focus. That's a term thrown around in missions, caring for other missionaries. It isn't only mental health, but that idea of how can we help them be continuing for the long haul in a healthy manner. Yeah. And my burden increasingly is for the African missionary women that I'm more and more getting to know. So, and generally, if they're involved in a relatively new mission, they don't have the structure in their mission organization like ours does to be of help to them like that. And they're often struggling with support. They're low in that. They're struggling culturally, maybe with language, because they're African, but they're in a different tribe with a different language and different cultural practices or whatever. They have extra expectations and roles or of their roles as women that maybe we don't face as much being Westerners. And so I'm asking God, what are next steps? How does he want me to get involved in being a practical support and encouragement to these African missionary women?
Yeah, and the whole area of member care.
Right. I mean, I'm not opposed to encouraging Western missionaries either.
Yeah. Great. Okay, I see that Mark has his hand up, so go ahead. You can ask your question.
Hello, Gordon Carroll. Good to see you today. Hey. Wow. So I guess are you calling from your house?
Yep.
We are. We're here in Eldoret.
Yeah, we're sitting in our dining room.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah, it'd be great to get a tour tour of the neighborhood, but I realize now it's probably not a good time for that. But
Another time, we'll set it up with you.
yeah.
Yeah.
What are you pretty connected with a local church there? In your
Okay, we
area?
work, not right now, because anybody over 58 isn't allowed to go to church.
Are you
So-
allowed now? I'm not sure.
I don't think so. So,
Probably not, because they're
Yeah.
tightening some things again.
yeah, it goes, it's up and down, it changes, and right now, so we haven't.
We had just started attending a new church plant
Nearby.
that was planted from among the church we were involved with, and it was within walking distance. And then COVID hit and everything got shut down.
Yeah.
And
So-
but
Yeah.
the pastor and his wife are our neighbors, so
Yeah.
we have seen them on
Uh-huh.
occasion. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
a tough one.
I think
But
having a
we
local
extend
church nearby during these
Pardon?
days is
Yeah.
it's kind of frustrating in some ways, because you can't engage with people like you normally would, but also there's a tremendous support people can give in those situations. So anyway, just praying for you guys, and thank you
Thanks.
for what you shared.
Thank you.
I just have a comment of encouragement. I'm not exactly sure who it's from because it just says iPhone, but thanks for sharing your depression journey, Carol. So many are struggling with this, especially during COVID and the large amount of loss involved. Thanks, Gord, for walking with her.
Thank you, iPhone.
It came from Deb
You
Woodall.
are.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't have a picture on right now.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Think. Okay. I guess I have a question just because
Sure.
and I'm unfamiliar with you. How did you first get into missions, or how did that whole journey first begin?
Wow.
If you can condense that. I'm sure it's a whole story.
Well, you see that guy, Mark, that just talked with us?
Yeah.
He was on the very first cross-cultural ministry missions experience we had. We were with Venture Teams International for a 1-year
Music drama evangelistic team in India, the Philippines, and Japan, and Western Canada. And that's when we got to know Mark.
Right.
And so that we were already heading towards long-term missions, but that was our very first, what was then considered short-term missions experience.
And her grandparents and her parents were missionaries
Right,
in Ethiopia. So she grew up
Yeah.
in that even though she was born in Ethiopia, but then grew up in the US and
And
Canada. So she had that family history background and so on.
And that
didn't
idea
have
that this was a genuine possibility to consider.
Right. And I was looking at, my profession was in aviation. So I was looking for pilot, engineer. How could I use that in mission context?
Mhm.
So that's what I was exploring when we came.
Right, with a mayor initially in aviation, our
Yeah.
first 10 years.
Right.
Here.
So I'm not in aviation now, but that was a stepping stone to what I'm actually doing now.
Cool.
And there's lots of stories there, but
In between.
Yeah, we'll just leave it.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll leave
the
it.
condensed version.
Yeah.
I also have family history in Africa. My grandparents were missionaries in Chad, Africa. So my dad was born and raised there till he was 16.
Okay.
So never been myself, but maybe one
Wow.
day.
Right now
Yeah.
it's pretty upside down.
In
There's-
Chad.
Yes, I heard about the president and all that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy there right now.
Oh, I see Matt and Andy have a question. Go ahead.
Yes, Gordon, Carol, we were just curious to know if you felt the Lord call you in like, what does the future kind of look like for you guys? I know that's a pretty broad question to ask.
Is that 2 questions? Wait a minute. The Lord called us about the future, or you mean way back in the beginning?
No, now, like, what does the future hold for Gordon, Carol that you can foresee? Yeah, which is a super loaded question.
Yeah, how long you got?
Sorry.
Anyway,
We got all day.
we really believe that this, at this stage in our journey, this is not a time to walk away from here. This is really a time, these young leaders that I've, 20 years, some of them I've known, I've been mentoring them, walking with them as God raises them. And as I come alongside them, this is a critical time. And they've actually said, one guy said to me, he said, do not deny us the privilege of caring for you in your old age. And I'm like, wow, that doesn't sound very North American.
When they're not even related to us by blood.
No, he said, do not deny us that privilege. And I said, well, take care. I get pretty cranky when I'm old, And they said, oh, well, that's not gonna be any different. No, they don't say that. And so but we just believe that God has us here. And if he wants to change that, we've actually purchased land. I built this house that you can see behind us here. I designed and built, and I'm still building it. And we believe that God has us here until he shows us otherwise. And so we're continuing on. This is, I would say, probably the most fruitful chapter of my journey is now.
Especially in this African context that does value older age and equivalent. They figure that means you're wiser and you have more experience. And it's not quite the same in North America, perhaps. But yeah, I would agree. There's a number of younger women, for me too, that I have more than enough opportunities to try to come alongside them. And I really need wisdom to know what's realistic in pacing myself and setting appropriate boundaries and limits so that I don't crash and burn. And, but yeah, fruitfulness.
So I guess part of it is to know, okay, Father, when is it time to step back?
Yeah.
When is it time? When is the appropriate time? And God will show us.
Yeah.
But for now, our health is good. We take seriously exercise and health and all of that. And we said, okay, Father, we'll keep on going. The Canadian government now has passed this funny law that says if you force somebody to retire, it's age discrimination.
Isn't that great?
Like, how goofy is this? And so it sounds like Canadian, right? And so it's just like, okay, Father, we're going to continue on. And as we get to come alongside emerging young leaders, Father will show us. We just trust him to show us if he wants us to change direction. Sure, we'd love to be with our kids. Our daughter's on here.
Yeah.
We'd like to be with our kids, family, grandkids, and Father knows all of that. So we had planned for her to do a grandma trip last year, but that got canned. And now we were going to both go back this summer for home assignment. That got canned. And Father knows all of those things. And so we're just saying, okay, Lord, how do we navigate this now? This is where you have us. And we'll just press on, continue on until Father shows us otherwise.
At the same time, we want to be sensitive that we don't become a hindrance here to the people here. If we ended up with major infirmities or, we're going senile or something where they would need to care for us more than they could, we might need to, make a change. So we want to be proactive and, keep seeking the Lord and take steps as he shows us if we need to think differently.
Right. We could give a whole seminar on this, but this is enough for now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's beautiful.
And Matt, I just wanted to know, is this something you pick up on the pandemic, or what's the deal here?
Oh yeah, you did.
Yeah, this is a pandemic thing.
Yeah. And I think it's a little bit of pandemic, a little bit of lazy. Also, if I do shave, I make myself look quite a bit younger. And
well, I'm
my daughter would really like me to shave, but I don't know.
So would his wife.
We'll leave it there.
Patrick's got the pandemic beard going on too.
Yeah, I see that. Wow.
Patrick. Any other questions? We have a little bit, maybe time for one more before we break into our prayer groups.
Maybe one. I'm Guy from Quebec City. Hi guys.
Hi.
Thanks for extend the invitation for us. Language, like in what language do you do mostly your ministries, whether you, Carol, or you, Gord?
It's a mix. English, Swahili. Sorry, il n'y a pas de français ici, so it doesn't work. Paul, I'm sorry. Je m'excuse. Anyways, so we don't have French here, unfortunately.
So our French is getting pretty
Yeah, it's
rusty,
getting
actually,
pretty rough.
especially now that he's not traveling to West Africa since
Yeah.
COVID and all.
So it's a mix, Swahili and English. And I know enough to get myself in serious trouble in either language. So it's, yeah.
And my English idioms lose me regularly.
Oh yeah, it's a hoot. It's really quite
Daily.
funny. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
How many languages can you speak, either partially or in full?
Oh my.
I guess that depends how you define.
Well,
partially.
I guess
Yeah,
partially,
some-
like I
some
can
are
count to
certain
10 in
languages
Chinese or
or-
whatever, like not
Yeah,
that.
no. We've worked on local Arabic. We worked on Swahili. We worked on a
Kazande,
couple of tribal
Lakwa.
languages. But it's like, it's in there somewhere.
Mm.
Yeah, it's like as you're trying to put them in the front door, they slip
They
out,
slip
others
out the
slip out the back, or
yeah.
you don't grab the right file. You know, you understand
Oh.
something, but you can't remember which language it's in,
Mhm.
or the wrong one pops out with whoever you're talking with right now.
And
then
I
it's
mean-
like, oops, sorry, that didn't work.
And if I'm in North America and I meet a black person on the street,
You
I
wanna
want
talk
to speak
Swahili?
Swahili. And I'm like, oh.
But they might be from West Africa and they don't know it.
work. Yeah. So, yeah, it's all mixed up.
Mhm.
And so sometimes we'll use a sentence and we'll have 3 or 4 languages, whatever the best terms are.
Yeah,
It's just, we understand each
like
other.
our
but-
kids get that,
Yeah.
you know, because they've got some French and English and Swahili too, or a
And
little bit of
Zande,
Zande.
Zande and whatever, and some Arabic thrown in there. And so he's just like, there's certain words that say things just.
But even here in Kenya, like
Oh,
people do
yeah.
regularly mix English and
Mm.
Swahili
It's all
in the
mixed
same
up.
sentence, even
Yeah,
if they
it's
live in
all
an
mixed up.
urban area. I
Yeah,
forget what the linguistic name is for that phenomenon, but
yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing. It was cool to learn a little bit more about you guys and connect with you. So we'll break into our prayer rooms. Jeremy will handle that, and we'll pray for you. Thank you.
Okay, I've created some new breakout groups, again, somewhat random, but feel free to join up in that group. And we won't be coming back necessarily as a full group again. So I want to say thank you to Nikki for hosting this. Thank you to the Schmidts and the Swaspis for sharing your story. Thank you to all of you for being here with us. And join us again tonight at 7 p.m. If you have a ticket, we'll see you in person. If you're online, it'll be live streamed, and you can find those connection details through the church website. And tomorrow, Sunday morning, the 11 a.m. service is also being live streamed. So you'll get an invitation to join together, and let's pray for Gordon Carroll.